I want to cover a little bit of Halachot today, and then we'll go into your questions because I don't know what the schedule is going to be, especially as things are getting really, really busy right now. The days are getting longer, and the burden is getting bigger. And I don't know what the schedule is going to be before Pesach and so on. So because this year's Pesach is different than it typically is, if a person does not learn the halachot of Pesach, for sure they are almost guaranteed that they're going to be eating chametz on this Pesach coming up. And the reason why is because unlike other years where Pesach, Passover, is usually during a weekday, this year Pesach is on Motzei Shabbat, which creates a lot of confusion for people as far as burning the chametz, but at the same time eating chametz, and so on and so forth. So we'll go briefly into a few things. I'll try to be as quick as possible, but again, I highly recommend you take notes, and if you're not able to catch up, then just simply watch this again tomorrow and take down the notes. Because again, it's a person that eats chametz, a Jew that eats chametz on Pesach, it's din karet. Okay, it's the worst thing in the world. So you have to be careful of what you do. It's not a Pesach is not a suggestion. It's not a custom. It's an obligation from the Torah for Am Yisrael to preserve it. And there's a few major mitzvot. So first and foremost, a lot of the things that I'm going to say I learned with my Rav. A lot of it is based on the psak from Rav Ovadia, from Sefer the Chazon Ovadia. But of course, if you are have a different poskim, if you're Ashkenazi or Hasidish and so on, then you have to check with your own poskim on some slight changes that may be from time to time. But generally speaking, most of what I'm talking to you is almost certainly for Klal Yisrael. Okay, but for sure for all Sephardic Jews. Okay, so typically there is Ta'anit Bechorot before Pesach, which is the fast of the firstborn. But because, which is the something that's we do every year, and but this year, because Pesach is on Motzei Shabbat, on Saturday night, we cannot fast on Shabbat. We cannot fast on Friday. So some say that you fast on Thursday night, even though the actual the holiday this year starts on Saturday. They say you fast on Thursday, but the Rabbi Yosef Karo in the Shulchan Aruch says that since the fast was moved, it's not typically this way, then technically you don't even need to fast. But Rav Ovadia writes that you, if you don't want to fast, then simply go listen to someone complete a Masechet in the Gemara, and like most people do every year, and that will not only be a mitzvah that you're a part of, but also absolve you from the poskim that rule that you should fast, even though it was moved. So the point being is, so that would be on Thursday. Okay, so you can hear a Siyum Masechet and be absolved from it. But again, for anyone that is sick, for anyone that's pregnant or just gave birth or anything like that, you don't need to fast at all. Next thing is in regards to the checking of the chametz. Checking of the chametz is typically done on the 14th of Nisan, but this year it'll be done on the 13th, which is the Thursday. Thursday night is when there will be the checking for the chametz, which means that the fast is actually done this year before the checking of the chametz. So it's not, that's the opposite. So this year the checking, the bdikat chametz, is done on Thursday night, where you put, the custom is to put one of your family members to put 10 pieces that are smaller than kezait, small pieces of chametz in different parts of the house, and then you go look for it with a candle, or if it's dangerous, then you could do it with a flashlight even. And some say it's very good to use also a feather to look at different creases and look for the chametz. Some chachamim from a few hundred years ago actually frowned upon this custom of hiding chametz in case a person doesn't find it, but nonetheless, the person that hides it should, if you have a big house, you should write it on a piece of paper where you hid every single one in case the family members that are looking for the chametz cannot find it. But the bdikat chametz is part of the mitzvot of Pesach. You have to make a specific blessing on the bdikat chametz. You will find that in the Pesach Machzor, which is a specific prayer book for the time of Pesach. So there's a special prayer that you do. Now, since the actual holiday itself doesn't begin until Saturday, what happens there? That's really where the confusion is, because even though you're looking for chametz, you're still technically allowed to eat chametz throughout all of Thursday night, all of Friday, and until Pesach officially begins somewhere around 10 to 11 o'clock a.m. on Saturday afternoon. So the reality is that you're looking for chametz, but you're still going to have some chametz left. So what do you do with this chametz? This chametz that you're going to be using to eat Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday morning, you put it in one part of your house, whether it's going to be a certain section of your kitchen or wherever you want to put it, but it should be all of it in one place. The rest of the house should be clean already for Pesach, ready for Pesach, but just the utensils, pots and pans, and food that's still chametz that you're going to be using for those next day and a half should be in one section in the house. Now, until again Saturday, which again over here, for example, the last time to eat chametz is going to be the morning meal of Shabbat, which has to end here in Florida and Cooper City, has to end at 11:20 a.m. Okay, in Israel, on the other hand, where Rabbi Ephraim is, it's around 10 a.m., 10:15, something like that. So you have to check with the apps that you have or websites based on your zip code. When is the last time to eat chametz on Saturday? For all of us, it's Saturday, but just different times depending on where you are in the world. So, which means that again, you're checking for chametz. That's not the one that you're going to be eating during the next day and a half or so. Okay. After that, you have to on Friday. You have to burn the chametz. Burn the chametz that you're not going to be eating. Burn the chametz, and this is going to be on Friday morning. And even though you're still allowed, again, you're allowed to eat chametz for Friday night, and actually need to eat chametz technically for Shabbat and for Saturday morning, you still have chametz that you're not going to eat. Now, if it is closed packaging of things, you want to keep them, then you can sell that chametz. It's completely closed, untouched, and so on. You can sell that chametz. There are different websites, or your local rabbi in the community, I'm sure, have some type of an arrangement with a non-Jew that would buy the chametz for the duration of the holiday. So you could sell the chametz that's only closed. But if you have chametz that's opened, unless it's expensive liquor, you have to throw it out. Don't play games with this. And also, if it's things that are not gonna keep, because they're gonna expire and things like that. Again, this is part of the stuff that you burn as part of the burning of the chametz. Some communities, most communities, Jewish communities, have a fire, and usually in some type of a barrel that everybody throws their chametz in there on Friday morning, and the time to do it is like it would be done in a typical year, morning time, somewhere around a little bit before noon. Selling the chametz that you want to keep to use it after after Pesach is to be done ideally on Thursday. But it's okay to even sell the chametz this year on Friday because, again, you're technically allowed to eat it until Saturday morning, until Shabbat morning. But ideally to sell it on Thursday, but you can sell it even on Friday. I wouldn't recommend waiting for the last minute. When you're burning the chametz, remember to do the blessing. But when you're selling the chametz, you do without bitul blessing. There's no the blessing that you're doing as far as the bitul, the cancellation of the chametz that's left. You do on Shabbat afternoon. Shabbat afternoon is when you do that particular blessing. So now, on Friday, you're allowed to do melachot because it's not Yom Tov. So you're allowed to do melachot, with cook, clean, whatever it is that you need to do. But again, remember, it's you're preparing for the a long holiday. And it's an important holiday. This is one of the foundations of Judaism. It's not one of those holidays where it's like a custom. You have to be prepared for this. Now, as far as a little bit of a reminder for Halachot Shabbat, that when you are, let's say eating on Friday night. And after you finish eating, if you want to wash the dishes with a something that's not a sponge, you're not allowed to wash with a sponge. But if you have something that has holes in it, like a net, and you want to put soap on it, you're allowed. But that's only if you're going to use these utensils and different plates and so on Shabbat. But if you're not going to use them on Shabbat, you're not allowed to wash them on Shabbat. So for example, if you want to wash things on Friday night, no problem. But after Seudah Shlishit, on a typical Shabbat, you're not allowed to wash the dishes because Shabbat's over. So you're not going to be able to, an hour later or 2 hours later. So you're not going to be able to use those pots and pans and different things later on. So if you're washing dishes, even if it's in a kosher way, on Shabbat, it's after Seudah Shlishit, you're violating Shabbat. But here, you have to remember that, the dishes that you're using on Friday night, unless they are dishes that are you throw out in the garbage, the plastic dishes and things like that you throw out. These dishes you could only wash on Friday, to use them on Saturday morning. But after the Saturday morning meal, you're not allowed to wash those dishes or the pots and pans that you had the food in, because you're no longer going to be able to use them after that morning meal because they're all full of chametz. Okay, so that's why it is highly recommended not to make dishes like cholent and other types of dishes that stick to the pots and pans because you're not going to be able to wash them, for the duration of the holiday, because they're chametz. You have to, after the meal on Saturday morning, you have to put away all of the chametz, whatever bread you still have left. You have to crumble it into little tiny crumbs that are all little tiny crumbs, and then throw it out. Whatever food you have that's chametz, you throw everything out. The pots and pans, forks, knives that's not plastic, you're not throwing that out. All that stuff, you have to put it away in a section of your house that you're not going to enter and not going to use for the whole duration of the holiday. So again, you cannot wash your chametz on Saturday, on Shabbat, because again, you're not allowed to have it after that morning meal. And you have to make sure that you remember that you need to find out the exact time that you're no longer allowed to eat chametz and have chametz, because you have to not only finish the meal, but you have to put all this stuff away before that time. So if you're like, for example, in Israel, 10 o'clock in the morning, then that means that you have to pray morning nets, 6 o'clock in the morning prayer, get home. Usually there's no kiddush whatsoever in the synagogues this year on Pesach, because everybody has to hurry home and have the meal before the time's up, and then clean up everything. Any chametz that's left, throw out in the garbage. any pots, pans, whatever, put them away. If you disregarded my advice and you made yourself chulent or one of these dishes that the food sticks to the pots and pans, whatever you're not able to throw out because it's stuck to the pan, you have to leave it as is and put it in something, a garbage bag or so on, so there's no bugs in your house. But the reality is, it was a lot of people, what they do in this type of time is usually they make either dishes that are not sticky, easily washable, and easily you can empty it out and it's not gonna stick to anything, or they make mezonot like pizza and other types of mezonot for that Saturday morning meal. Now, as far as the rest is to make sure that you know that all the melachot are allowed on Friday, but not on Saturday because it's still Shabbat. So the preparation for the Seder, as far as the washing of the maror, you can't do it on Saturday. Okay, you have to clean the maror and the leaves and so on from bugs and so on. You have to do that on Friday. You can't do it on Shabbat because then it would be a melacha of Shabbat called borer. So you can't clean the chasa on Shabbat. You have to do it on Friday. Also recommended for you to weigh the matzot because the matzah, it's not just eating matzah and however you feel like and whenever. There's an obligation to eat matzah on the Seder for people that live in Israel only on the first night. For people that live in the exile like us, it's 2 nights, and you have to eat a kezait amount 4 times, which is what we go by is 30 grams. Okay, so you have to, you're not going to know how much 30 grams is because people think, 30 grams is a small little piece. No, it depends what kind of matzah you have. If you have one of these machine matzahs that are square, it's almost 3/4 of the matzah. You're going to have to eat that 4 times. Okay? If you have, let's say, one of these matzot shmurot, the round matzahs, then it depends how thick that matzah is, and you have to break off a piece and weigh it. Get a scale and weigh it, but you have to do that on Friday. On Friday. You can't do it on Shabbat. It'll be chilul Shabbat. You have to do it on Friday. If you have something called ftera, which is the matzah that's similar to pita, but it's kosher for Pesach, that's made, then usually it's a little less than 1/4 of the pita because it's a very heavy in weight. So point is, you have to do this stuff, before Pesach, and you have however many members of your family and people that are attending your Seder. Really, what it should be is each person should have his chasa, his maror, and his matzah, all in different in bags, like these Ziploc bags, where they know, okay, this is my 4 servings of the matzah to fulfill the obligation of eating matzah on the Seder. This is the maror that I'm going to eat for the Seder, and each person should have his own little thing. Where, of course, usually the mom is the one that does the job, or the father, if the father's doing it. But the point being is, don't leave it up to, we'll just figure it out as we go. Because what ends up happening is people sit in a Seder, they eat like horses, but they end up not fulfilling the mitzvah because they don't know how much to eat. Also, you have to know that to eat the matzah, you have to eat it within 4 minutes. Unless it's a child that's before bar mitzvah age, or it's someone sick, then you have up to 9 minutes. These halachot seem difficult at first. It seems burdensome. It seems ridiculous. Why do they care? How this? How that? But that's the reality, Rabotai. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. And anyone that's a chacham lev, that has a wise heart, will simply just take notes, follow what it says, and move on with it, and just do what Hashem says, and that's it. And not just make all types of excuses of why he doesn't or he doesn't want, and all that types of stuff. Just simply do it. It's not that difficult, especially when you want to do it. So preparation as far as the maror, as far as the matzah, on Friday, not on Shabbat. Okay? On Saturday morning, the prayer at the synagogue, or if you're praying by yourself at home, because your synagogue in your community is closed, or for whatever other reason, you have to pray early netz minyan, early morning, because you need to make sure to make the time to have the Seudah for Shabbat before that midday, which again, midday right now in Florida is somewhere around 11:20. In Israel, it's somewhere around 10:20. Again, you have to check with your own community where it starts. You end eating chametz on, again, at that time. At that time, it's not just end eating it, but also have to move everything already before that time. Put it in a specific section in your house that you're not going to use, or in the garbage. That's why a lot of people, usually for this type of Shabbat, for this that comes before Pesach, many people use everything as a disposable. Disposable spoons and knives, disposable plates, and in certain places that have it available to them, disposable pots and pans. There's disposable everything these days. So it's best to have one of these disposable pots and pans and so on that you're making food in, because that way you don't have to worry about cleaning anything or bugs. Everything goes in the garbage. That's it, finished. That's the ideal situation if you have it available to you. Now, the Seudah on Friday night, you have to have Motzi. You have to have something that will do Motzi for Birkat HaMazon. Now, you're allowed to eat matzah on Friday, but you're not allowed to eat matzah on Saturday, because you're not allowed to eat. We'll go into that in a moment. But on Saturday, you can eat matzah if you want, but you still have to do motzi. And a lot of poskim say that you're not allowed to do motzi on matzah during the year. It's a machloket, and therefore you have to eat bread. You have to eat bread to do the motzi on the bread. And your meal is chametz, but point is, it's either way, you have to have the motzi on Friday night. Now, on the after the meal of Saturday morning, you do the mitzvah of bitul chametz, which is cancellation of the chametz, the one that you know of, that's you go throwing in the garbage, the one that you don't know of, that you haven't found perhaps, or you didn't realize you had. There's a certain blessing that you say, that's bitul chametz. Okay? Now, you're not allowed to eat matzah on the day of Pesach. The Gemara in Yerushalmi, Masechet Pesachim, section 10, Halacha number 1, says anyone that eats matzah on the day of Pesach Eve is like a person who was intimate with his fiancé inside his father-in-law's or future father-in-law's house. Okay, it's to that extent. It's frowned upon and forbidden to that extent. Reuven, again, Gemara says anyone that eats matzah on the day of Pesach, meaning before the Seder, is like someone that was intimate with his future wife, not his current wife, in his father-in-law's house. That's how much disrespectful it is. Why? You went too early. You went too early. You're not supposed to eat matzah before the Seder. Now, some don't eat matzah the whole month. The whole month to make sure that they, are going to really celebrate eating the matzah when the time comes, and it's really special. Some don't eat it the whole week before Pesach. Our minhag and the general custom among most people is simply not to eat matzah just that day. But for sure not to eat matzah that day. You're allowed to eat matzah on Friday, okay, but Saturday, no matzah. Until the Seder itself. Now, Now, this creates a issue. The fact that we're not allowed to eat matzah creates an issue. What's the issue? What do you do for Seudah Shlishit, the third meal of Shabbat? You have the first meal of Shabbat on Friday night. The second meal of Shabbat is on Saturday morning. And the third meal of Shabbat is usually about an hour and a half, 2 hours before the end of Shabbat, Seudah Shlishit. Now, since this year, Pesach already starts at around 10 to 11 o'clock in the morning, and you're no longer allowed to eat chametz, okay? That means you can't have challah for Seudah Shlishit. At the same token, you're also not allowed to eat matzah. You're not allowed to eat matzah on Seudah Shlishit either. So, what do? So some people will eat what's called a rich matzah, which is a matzah that's made with wine, flour, and sugar. So it lost in essence its matzah taste. Or they eat fried matzah or cooked matzah. This obviously always cooked or fried before Shabbat. And they're allowed to eat that because these types of matzahs have lost their real matzah taste. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, alav shalom, would not eat at all Sudah Shlishit. Would not eat Sudah Shlishit at all. And instead would share secrets of the Torah during that time, because he said that you cannot eat challah because it's chametz, and you cannot eat matzah because, as we just said, it's forbidden. So he says, what do? Let's just eat more Torah and prepare ourselves for the Seder that's coming up in several hours, and make sure to arrive at that Seder very hungry. Now that's also another thing, that even if you eat other things, you want to eat fruits, you want to eat vegetables, you want to eat other stuff, that's fine. But make sure that, or if let's say you're eating the rich matzah or the fried matzah, all these other things that are allowed to eat, it's fine, but make sure you don't stuff your face to the point where, a few hours later when you have to do the Seder, you're still full, and you don't, because you have to arrive at the Seder hungry because you have, that's the way you're supposed to eat matzah. Okay, so it's important for a person to know. Now, if somebody is going to eat fried matzah or cooked matzah or rich matzah, then if they eat just a small piece, then they do a ala mechia ending blessing on it. But if they eat 216 grams, which is pretty decent, it's a lot, but nonetheless, if they eat 216 grams of the of this matzah, then they have to do actual birkat hamazon. But again, don't eat too much, so you still stay hungry for the Seder. Now, when it comes to matzah shmura, these are the round matzahs that are typically used for the Seder. It's not recommended to use those machine matzahs for the Seder, because there's a whole machloket of even if it's considered matzah or not. Point being is, you're going to have to cough up some money on buying the round matzahs if you want to celebrate the holiday in a better way. It's if anyone that wants to get it and doesn't have it available locally to them, or they want something that's extra special, can contact me and I'll connect you with one of my dear friends that is selling that matzah. It's not cheap. Don't ask for discounts. This is not the time to save money. Pesach is expensive, but nonetheless, it's one of the biggest expenses is matzah. So you can get these matzah shmura from anywhere from $30 to a box of 1 pound to 70, 100. There's even some as much as $500. I think it's a little crazy, but nonetheless, they exist. They exist in the world. Everyone has their own idurim and so on and so forth. The point being is, it's you have to make sure that you have solid, good matzah. If you don't know, all these stores sell different matzahs. I wouldn't necessarily say always buy the most expensive, because the most expensive doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. I wouldn't necessarily buy the cheapest just because, sometimes things are cheap for a reason. But try to look at who's the ashkacha, who actually did the ashkacha on this, and it's more well known and accepted among Klal Yisrael, the better it is. Like if it's, let's say for example, a specific type of ashkacha that's only accepted among, let's say, their own Hasidut, but let's say the Ashkenazim and the Sfaradim don't accept it, while you have another choice of matzah where everybody accepts their ashkacha, the Hasidim, the Ashkenazim, and the Sfaradim, which is almost, unrealistic, but nonetheless, if there's one that has ashkacha that everybody accepts, get that one versus the one that's only accepted among others. This is sometimes common among, for example, meat. There are many people that do not eat meat from, let's say, the ashkacha of certain people or certain organizations for all their own reasons. So, Sfaradim have to have a Bet Yosef, but at the same token, if some Bet Yosef is not available, some will go to other ashgachot, but they won't eat Chabad. They won't eat Chabad's ashgacha. Why? They have their own reasons. But in other places, some people, no, they won't eat this one, but they'll eat another one. It's not racism or prejudice. Everybody has their own reasons for doing it. And I know that's one of the things that's making this distribution, this Kimcha de Pischa that we're doing, distributing food to poor tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael, that's actually one of the dilemmas that we're dealing with, because we, Baruch Hashem, because we've distributed so much food and money in Eretz Yisrael over the last few years, we've now made contact for the first time ever with the actual distributor itself, meaning the company that supplies the supermarket. Rather than buying everything from supermarkets, Be'ezrat Hashem, we're trying to actually buy everything from the actual wholesaler. So that way each family will get practically double the food that we would typically get them, because we buy them from supermarkets. So let's say 1,000 that's gonna shekels, that's let's say gonna get let's say 10 chickens, and this piece of meat and that piece of this, all this thing. Now that's when you buy it from a supermarket. But when you buy it from the wholesaler, it's now 20 chickens, and so it's that, because obviously everybody has a markup. So we prefer to obviously give the families much more food. We're not looking to save money. We're still going to give the same amount of money. It's just that we're going to have the ability to give more food to these families, which will last them the whole holiday, not just the Seder. So that's one of the things that we're having a tough time with, is when it comes to meat. Okay? Because when it comes to chicken, there is a kashrut of chicken that most people accept in Eretz Yisrael. But when it comes to meat, it's virtually impossible to find two communities that eat the same type of ashgacha, kashrut of meat. He wants Rav Mahmoud, he wants Badatz, he wants... Everybody has their own thing. So it's impossible to supply this to so many hundreds of families and cater it to each and every single person and so on. So most likely we're not going to do meat at all. We're just going to do a lot of chicken and obviously other fish, salmon. Each one is going to get a salmon that is a little bit bigger than a baby. So B'ezrat Hashem, we're working on it. The point I'm trying to make is that when it comes to ashgacha is very important. You can't just eat anything that has a K on it. You have to look at things. And sometimes it's less important, sometimes it's more important. So for example, when it comes to meat, the most important part of the meat is who actually supervised this kashrut. That's the most important part of any meat. It's not if this is a this or that, or it's who supervised it. Why? Because if the supervisor is one of these reform mentality supervisors, it might not even be kosher. And on the other hand, when it comes to things that are parv, then there's less of an issue, because again, it's less things can go wrong. But when it comes to matzot, most people are not going to know all of the ashgachot, because there's a lot of seasonal operations of different rabbis and Talmidei Chachamim that only function once a year to make the matzot. So you're not going to see their stamp on other food throughout the rest of the year. But if it is possible for you to get some type of word of mouth or some type of recommendation of one over another, not just because of price, it is recommended to get those. Again, like I said, I have a friend that deals with it. Anyone that wants to deal with it, we could help. But again, don't break my head and give me work to do. That's also, as a side note, there's a few of you that God bless you. I try to do everything, but you guys are sending me homework. Like, hey, Rabbi, once you read this article, let me know what you think. They send me like a 5-page article. They want me to read it. Go read it yourself. Don't give me homework. It's a lot of people are sending me this missions. Oh, Rabbi, can you look into this Bet Din and tell me what you think of them? You know how long that stuff takes. You can't give people. You have to ask specific questions. So again, I appreciate that everybody cares about my opinion so much and what I think of certain things, but you have to realize that I have literally tens of thousands of people that I deal with regularly, hundreds of emails and messages every single day. It's simply not possible for me to address some of these projects that people send me on. And the same thing goes with these matzahs. You want me to help you? I'll give you the contact information. You do everything from that point. We could help you by simply making the transaction for you. You send the money, we'll send them the address, and they'll ship you the matzahs, and that's it. Don't ask, oh yeah, I don't like it, return policies, no returns. It's just simply doing a service. You want it, get it. You don't want it, b'chavod, go buy it from your local store, and Bezat Hashem ta'asu v'tetzlichu. But this is, again, only if you are domestic in the United States. Don't ask me for any shipments into different countries. It's not the time. Anyway, back to the halachot. Matzah shmura, again, this is the matzah you're going to be using. This is the matzah that you're going to be using for the Seder and for the Pesach. Now, you can eat those square matzot if you want during the holiday, but for the Seder, it should be a matzah shmura, or if you have ftera, if you like the ftera, which is the soft matzahs. But again, those you have to be very, very careful with the kashrut. I know that Rav Gidon ben Moshe, the Sheikh is the head of the Jerusalem Beit Din. He has a recipe from hundreds and hundreds of years that he makes those every year. Sometimes we get them. That's actually going to be part of the things we give out to the families in Eretz Yisrael that are needy. But even those, again, not everybody wants them. Why? I'm only going to get those fterot from a rabbi that I know. So if they don't know Rabbi Gidon, which is unusual, but nonetheless, some people won't know him, they won't accept it. So you have to be careful with kashrut. People care about kashrut even more so in Israel than they do here in America. But the point being is that matzah that you're going to eat, the matzah shmura, you're not allowed to carry it on Shabbat. What? Why? It's considered muktzeh. Why? Because you're not allowed to eat it. And therefore, you're not allowed to touch it. So don't set up anything during the day of Shabbat. Don't set up anything during the day of Shabbat. In fact, in regards to setting up for the Lila Seder, you're not allowed to do that on Shabbat because you're not allowed to prepare for Motzei Shabbat on Shabbat, and you're not allowed to prepare for a holiday on Shabbat. You're only allowed to do things on Shabbat that are relevant to Shabbat. So when can you prepare for the Seder, especially if you're expecting a lot of guests? The earliest time that you're allowed to start setting up the table for Leil Seder, the earliest time halachically, is 13 and a half minutes after sunset. If you start setting up the table for the Seder, start setting up everything for the Seder, before that, you start doing it in the afternoon, you start doing it even 15 minutes before sunset, you are a mechalel Shabbat. You're violating Shabbat. Okay? Not allowed to do it. You have to take this, this is like mamash. People could literally lose their olam haba for a stupid minute because they have anxiety problems. So you have to know, 13 and a half minutes before sunset is the earliest. Personally, I recommend you wait a little bit. Start doing everything already after. But again, if you want to do it 13, at that time, that's perfectly fine. Some women have a lot of guests and a lot of anxiety to go with it. They want to get every minute that they can. That's no problem. But again, don't do it too early, because if you do it too early, it's a very, very serious problem. During the prayer, before the Seder, the actual tefillah itself, instead of atachon antanu, which usually you do in Mariv on Motzei Shabbat, you actually add a prayer called Vetodienu. Vetodienu is what you're adding to the prayer at that point. It's similar to atachon antanu, but it's not the same. This you'll see also in your machzorim. Now, when it comes to Abdalah, Abdalah is, on Motzei Shabbat, Abdalah is part of the Seder. It's not separate like it is every single week. It's actually part of the Seder. Okay? Part of the Agadah, part of everything. It's right from the beginning. You're going from Abdalah into the Seder. It's not like two separate things. Okay? So, you have to do Abdalah this year is only with wine and the fire, no besamim. No besamim, because the besamim is usually to make the neshama feel better because the extra neshama left. But since we're going from Kodesh to Kodesh, from holiness of Shabbat to the holiness of Yom Tov of Pesach, the Neshama Yetera, the extra Neshama, stays, doesn't leave. Okay, so there's no besamim needed. So you do it on wine. You say the prayer is, instead of Amavdil ben Kodesh lechol, from holiness to the mundane, we say Amavdil ben Kodesh lekodesh. Okay, so you have to pay attention to that. That is, again, usually in the beginning of your Agadah. We, Bezat Hashem, will be coming out as an organization again this year with an Agadah in Hebrew only, with new Chidushim by Rav Ephraim. We're going to be printing 1,000 copies in Eretz Yisrael, hard copy. It's going to be beautiful, beautiful Agadah. I just got the messages today with the stuff. We'll have a online digital version available, but I personally myself like hard copy. So if you have a hard copy available to you, then you should definitely get that. But if you have a you don't have it, then obviously you can download it from our website, the Agadah. You'll have. We have a English version from last year, but that hasn't been updated, and also there's a few errors that need to be fixed, which I don't think we'll have the time to do before Pesach. It's not like the worst mistakes in the world or anything, but it's just a few errors. If you compare the Hebrew to the English, there's a few minor errors. I personally would recommend somebody getting it from a store. If you need the English version, getting something from a store to buy something. Personally, I like the Katz. Katz's Agadah has beautiful drawings. The kids love it, and drawings are not just beautiful drawings, but the actual drawings that are based on the Midrash. So each drawing has significance to it. Point being is, this is what I would recommend. But of course, there are countless Agadot. If you have one or you want to buy one, there's plenty of them available on different websites, on ArtScroll, on Feldheim, on Sefarim Center, on Muznaim, and countless other Judaica stores and so on. Get yourself an Agadah, but make sure you get it for your custom. Don't buy a Ashkenazi Agadah if you're Sephardic. Don't buy a Sephardic Agadah if you're Ashkenazi, unless you know it's a specific difference. Like, for example, the Katz Agadah is actually Ashkenazi. I'm Sfaradi, but I know the difference between the two, and I know where to make the certain changes. I like it for my kids. I like it for my kids because it's the most visually appealing Agadah that I've seen. So I give it to them, and they're babies. 4 years old, 6 years old. It's a little kid, so it's not. They don't necessarily need to know every single word. So whenever I need to make a change, I make a change. But someone that's getting it for themselves, if you're reading it for everybody and you're Sfaradi, either know the difference and ahead of time and know where to make the changes, which the biggest difference usually is in the Birkat HaMazon and the Hallel. But there are some other minor differences between Sfaradi and Ashkenazi. But if you don't know the differences, then get your traditions, your customs Agadah. It is what it is. As far as the Havdalah, again, like I said, it's part of the Seder. On the you do Geffen, then you do the Kiddush, then you do the fire. Okay, which that will elaborate and finish at that point, which is again the fire, which is the Abdalah fire. When you say Kodesh leKodesh. Now, the fire is a problem. Why is the fire a problem? Because you can't light a new fire at this moment because it's Chag. Even though you just finished Shabbat, it's Moshe Shabbat, but it's Yom Tov, so you can't light a new fire. Okay, you can't light a new fire. So what you have to do is have a long-lasting candle, at least 48 hours, lit before Shabbat. Before Shabbat, I personally recommend lighting 2, just in case one goes out. A 48-hour, 72-hour candle that you can light before Shabbat, because if you want to cook on the Yom Tov, which is one major difference that you're allowed to do on Yom Tov versus Shabbat, you're allowed to cook, but you're only allowed to cook with fire to fire, meaning it has to be a existing fire lighting the new fire versus a new fire creating. So you have to have an existing fire, so you have to have a candle already lit from before Shabbat. Okay, so you have a 48-hour candle or 72-hour candle that you're using, but that candle, you can't use it for Havdalah. You can't use that for Havdalah. Why? Because the candle over those 25 hours that Shabbat exists, that candle goes down. Okay, and as soon as that candle goes down, now it starts to be covered by the glass or whatever is covering the candle itself. Okay, and now, according to the Shulchan Aruch, you can no longer use that candle for Abdalah, because even though it's fire, the fire that you're seeing against your fingernails when you're doing the Abdalah is not the actual fire itself, but a reflection of the fire, and it's not permissible for Abdalah. This also actually is a chidush for many of us, simply because you have a big candle that's beautiful and everything, but that candle, after a while, after a few times you've used it for Abdalah, starts sinking in, and if you didn't realize what the halacha is, you're still using that candle. But the Shulchan Aruch says that you have to have a raised fire. You have to have a fire that's high. That's why a lot of people use that candle that's very long, because the wicks are at the top of it. So it doesn't matter how much of it you've used, the fire is always on top. Okay? So what you want to do is that you don't want to have a really long candle for this specific Avdalah, because what are you going to do with it after? You can't turn it off. So what some people do is they either take that long candle and just cut a small piece of it and connect it to a holder where even after you light it, it burns off eventually, and it's like a small candle, but it's still at the top. Or you use like one of those like Shabbat candles that eventually burn off. You don't want this whole candle, long candle, burning for so long. It can become a little dangerous, because again, it's not like the ones that are in a glass. Point being is that it has to be fire to fire, so use the existing fire that you lit already on Friday to light the Havdalah candle, and make sure that the Havdalah candle is short, but yet the fire is at the top of it, not sinking in, is short, so the fire eventually goes out that night, and not something that lasts, multiple days. Okay, so don't light like another 72-hour candle with that, for Havdalah. That's about sums it up, Rabotai, for the halachot of Pesach, the Seder section. Last thing I would say is in regards to the rest of the holiday. Obviously, for the exile, we have 2 seders. Every Jew that lives in the exile has to do 2 seders. You cannot just do 1. You have to do 2, and they're exactly the same. There's no difference. 2 afikuman. You have to drink 4 glasses of wine or grape juice. You have to eat the matzah, 4 servings, the maror, read the entire Agadah, enjoy, make sure not to fight, have a good time. The main part of the Seder is to teach the children of the house about Yetziat Mitzrayim. That's the main part. So even if you have the most important rabbi in the world, most important person in the world, as a guest in your house, you have to make them secondary to your children. Why? The main thing is to tell your children about Yetziat Mitzrayim until everybody's tired and they go to sleep. But that's the main thing. The main thing of Pesach is not to host guests. The main thing of Pesach is to actually teach your children about the Exodus. And that's the most important part. And if you don't have kids, then tell the story to your wife. And if you don't have a wife, then tell the story to yourself. Point is, you have to do as much as possible on the Seder, on both nights. The more you say, the more praiseworthy you are. Then after the second night, you have Hol Hamoed. A lot of people think that Hol Hamoed is just a day off, you can go back to work. Wrong. People that desecrate Hol Hamoed and treat it like a regular day, and they just go back to work unnecessarily, can lose their Olam Haba. Okay, you're only allowed to work on Hol Hamoed if it not working will create a loss. Meaning, if let's say you go to work, you make money, and you don't go to work, you don't make money, that's not considered a loss. That's just considered, you're not making a profit. But if your boss tells you, if you don't work on Hol Hamoed, you're going to get fired, then you're allowed to work on Hol Hamoed. That's only on Hol Hamoed, not on Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, there's no working. On Shabbat, there's no working. Doesn't matter what your boss says. But on Hol Hamoed, there's only permission to work, and if it's going to, if not working would create a loss. If not working, create a loss. Same thing with investments. You're only allowed to deal with the investments if the not doing something would create a loss. Like you can't buy anything new, but you can sell, you can exit positions, or you can close out positions. Unless, again, what you're buying is a hedge. Point being is, you have to know that Hol Hamoed is still a holiday. It's still a holiday. It's not a time to just go back as if there's no holiday. You have to make sure that you honor the holiday. So with that being said, Rabotai, that's in essence sums it up of this year's Pesach. If you have any other questions, you could ask them privately if I need to look up stuff or anything that I didn't cover. But that's in essence pretty much it.
You know when you have a dream and you see a pretty woman? You've had that? Now you never actually see an ugly woman in dreams. It's always a pretty woman. And by the way, it's always the same woman for all of us. All of us have a dream of the same exact woman. And she's more dangerous than the Satan himself. Who is she? You're not even allowed to say her name. What are you gonna call her for?
It functions very much like drugs. People are addicted to it.
I tried to quit dozens of times, hundreds of times.
My fantasies and stuff, they're not mine anymore.
Cabinet ministers, judges, diplomats, even one of the country's top spies. These men are accused of some of the most sadistic child sexual abuse imaginable on hundreds of victims.
It shouldn't take over your whole life. If you satiate it, you're never going to have enough. If you starve it and only feed it when it's permissible according to the Torah, you're always going to be happy.